The West Asia conflict is no longer a distant geopolitical story. Its impact is now being felt far beyond the region, not just in geopolitics, but in the everyday cost of doing business across the globe, including ASEAN. Behind the scenes, businesses are dealing with rising costs, delayed shipments, and growing pressure on cash flow. But beyond these visible impacts, there are deeper financial stresses building within the system. So what are ASEAN businesses really facing right now? Well, at this point, we're joined by Jack Young, Regional Director of GlobalTech Horizons Asia, to give us a little more insight. Jack, we're seeing reports that the impact of the West Asia conflict is now reaching everyday goods in Asia, from instant noodles to bottled water to cosmetics and rubber gloves. From your perspective, how would you describe what ASEAN businesses are really experiencing on the ground from the West Asia conflict that's beyond what we see regularly in headlines?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Well, honestly, I think that what we're seeing on the ground is very different from the headlines. Headlines talk about geopolitics, oil, shipping routes, but for SMEs in ASEAN, it's much more immediate. Okay, what do I mean by that? Their costs are going up quietly. Shipping routes are changing, but for this kind of SME deliveries, right, and margins are getting squeezed without them fully understanding why. Like, for example, a restaurant owner doesn't really care about the Straits of Hormuz. He just knows that his ingredient costs just went up by 10 to 15%. Now, a small manufacturer doesn't see the conflict. He just sees the delay in shipments and customers asking for longer payment terms. So I think the real experience is this. Uncertainty is increasing, but visibility is decreasing. And that's the dangerous combination that SMEs are facing right now.
Right, so of course we know about the disruption that's happening around the key shipping routes, especially now in focus, Strait of Hormuz. But the question is, which ASEAN sectors are really feeling the pressure? Is it manufacturing, energy-linked industries, consumer supply chains, or do you think it's going to have a domino effect from one sector to another?
Well, Jesse, this question, I feel that the pressure is not really equal across sectors. Now, energy-linked industries are obviously the ones that feel the fuel costs affect everything. They are the first to feel it. Now, but the real stress is happening in the consumer supply chains and light manufacturing. So these businesses operate on very thin margins and short cash cycles. So even small increases in shipping costs or slight delays can immediately affect their ability to restock, fulfill orders, and maintain their pricing. Now, some large corporations can absorb all these shocks, but like the smaller SMEs, I would say they feel the impact almost instantly, especially in the F&B, retail, and the small-scale manufacturing sector.
So what are the less visible financial or even credit side shocks that SMEs are facing at this point of time? I could only imagine it could be things like tighter payment terms, rising financial costs, as you've pointed out as well, by 10 to 15%, but also working capital strain that's definitely slowing SMEs down.
Well, the actual problem is not really logistic, but actually it's financing. You're right that you correctly pointed out. What we are seeing is suppliers tightening credit terms, buyers delaying payments, and banks becoming more cautious. So SMEs are getting squeezed from both sides. They need to pay faster, but they are getting paid slower. And at the same time, financing is either more expensive or harder to access. So even if their business is still running, their cash positions is deteriorating quietly, and that's the part most people don't see.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, you've highlighted as well that having that ability or that bandwidth to remain resilient, that can also hide itself as a big hidden risk. What if some SMEs or even MSMEs do not have that holding capability to be as liquid as they would wish for? Why is cash flow now becoming more critical than profits, especially during a season of these sort of shocks?
Well, I think that cash flow becomes more important than profit during uncertainty, because profit is just on paper, right? But cash is survival. You can be profitable, but still collapse if you run out of cash. And that's what I think. So right now, shocks are happening faster than the revenue cycle. So business cannot really rely on future profits. They need cash today. That's what I think.
So let's be realistic about it without causing any panic. What does the scene look like for SMEs in the next 60 to 90 days? We've spoken to some experts in the area of food safety as well, who've all indicated that we are on good footing until perhaps June, and here's hoping things will start to take shape from now on till then. But in reality, what does it look like for SMEs on the ground?
Well, if you're asking me for the next 90 days, it's really volatile. It's going to be unknown. Well, with everything happening right now in the world. But I can say that we could actually diversify a bit. Like what I think is what I usually advise SMEs is we could diversify, digitalize, and de-risk. So firstly, like diversifying of revenue. We don't rely on just one supplier. We could actually have a few suppliers. We don't rely on one customer. We have many customers and more channels. Now, digitalized visibility is about understanding their numbers weekly. So instead of a monthly kind of numbers review, we can have a weekly number review so that it can actually help in their cash flow. And lastly, what I feel is that de-risking, it will be more on finance. Okay, before you get the crunch or before you get the pressure, right? I would say that SMEs, if you're able to secure the access to capital right now, please do so before you feel the squeeze. Because if you get the capital now, it's better than getting it later when you need it urgently. Yeah, that's what I feel.
In terms of resilience or for ASEAN as a bloc, do you think ASEAN SMEs are structurally resilient enough to absorb any repeated shocks like this further down the road? Or do you think as a region, we are still unprepared?
Well, I think that ASEAN SMEs are really, really resilient, but they're not structurally prepared. Okay, like ASEANs, they like to hustle. They're strong in hustle. They adapt well, and they have good relationships. But they are very weak in financial planning, risk management, and even the access to diversified capital. So they might be able to survive one shock, but if there's repeated global disruptions like this, and like what we are seeing right now, more and more gaps will start to appear. And that's why the structure need to be built in a solid foundation. And that's how they are able to survive more shocks if there will be more coming. Yeah.
Well, Jack, thanks for speaking to us. And here's hoping that there are brighter days and more promising days for SMEs for the region ahead. We'll speak to you soon.